a guy like Titus, you know, I hear people say his career is over. Well, first of all, it's really not about his career right now. It's about his life. And second of all, if he gets that in order, we'll be looking at a success story. And this is a guy who will be in a locker room, and guys will be coming to him for advice. Months back, you know, I wanted to get my hands on Titus, you know, just sit down with him and possibly, you know, walk him into the doors of the same program I was in, you know. But I think there were some things in a way that kept us both from, you know, moving forward. And I am disappointed in that, because since then it's just gotten worse. I'm praying for Titus, and I know, you know, this can be a success story, but we need to embrace it, and we also need to advocate for people in positions like this.
Titus Young's career as an NFL wide receiver was derailed by off-field issues. Young was arrested 3 times last week, and now Young's father told the Detroit News that his son has a brain disorder. He said Titus has medication for the issue but hasn't been taking it as prescribed. Stephen A., I'll start with you first. How should the NFL respond to this sort of situation?
Well, they should be incredibly thoughtful and careful in how they publicize their handling of this. I'd say that first and foremost. And let me preface my comments by saying, giving a level of gratitude to both yourself, Kerry, and Skip, because obviously Skip, you know, it was a bit reluctant to talk about it because you didn't know what to say, because we don't have all the facts in front of us. And it was something that I personally insisted on talking about. I wanted to talk about it. So I thank you, Skip, for bearing with me on this. Here's where I'm coming from. Brandon Marshall was somebody that was suspended for 3 games. Ultimately, his suspension was reduced to 1 game for some of the troubles that he had. You know, you had other players that were suspended, the Pac-Man Jones of the world and others. They obviously had problems. Clearly, in the case of Pac-Man Jones as well, there were issues that were well noted and what have you, and we all know what happened to Big Ben Roethlisberger. Even though those were separate incidences, he was never arrested or anything like that, but the accusations that were levied in his direction obviously was something that impugned the integrity of the NFL, and the NFL, as a result, felt the need to suspend it for 6 games before ultimately reducing it to 4. What I'm trying to say is, based on my conversations with a Brandon Marshall in the past, somebody that I've grown to respect even more, who I think his heart is definitely in the right place. I think we all should be influenced in terms of our heart being in the right place, recognizing that this guy, Titus Young, has a problem. We should be sensitive to it. We should be insistent upon him receiving whatever help that he may need, based on what Brandon Marshall was alluding to, based on what his father alluded to. But that doesn't give him the right to work in the NFL. And that's what this comes down to. Am I advocating unemployment? Absolutely not. But am I advocating that he be treated any differently, as opposed to a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, who was never arrested, let alone arrested 3 times in 1 week? You know, and one accusation or one allegation was about burglary and then resisting arrest, where officers had to lay their hands on him, where he was trying to, you know, lay his hands on them, reportedly. Those are issues. And I don't understand how somebody like Big Ben Roethlisberger, never arrested, never indicted, you understand, nothing like that, can end up losing 4 games out of a season. But this guy gets to operate with impunity. Of course, nobody is saying that definitively is going to happen. I'm simply saying it can't happen. The priority has to be us having a level of sensitivity towards his problem, not dismissing any mental health issues, addressing it with the fervor that it deserves, which Brandon Marshall has been on a mission to bring attention to, and I applaud him for that. We just can't lose sight of the importance of fairness to all of those other folks who may not have those problems, who may not have deserved such punishment, but incurred it anyway. But yet you look at this guy and you give him a pass because of whatever mental issues he's suffering from. Clearly, he needs help. Clearly, he's somebody I hope gets the help that he needs. I hope that in the event that happens, he ultimately is back in the NFL. I would hope that the NFL would assist him in providing, in receiving help. The help that he needs, because he's one of their own, and they should if they can. But ultimately, the reality of the situation is he's got a problem. And as long as he's got a problem, he can't be in the NFL bringing these kind of problems to their name, because if you allow that to continue, then what about all the other dudes that you may want to punish down the line? I mean, if all they, and I'm not trying to dismiss it, because it seems to me this guy really, really has a problem. But we know how this world works. His problem may be legit. There are others who might use it as an excuse where that ain't their problem at all. Their problem might be stupidity, irresponsibility, etc. And they might use that as an excuse. That's a dicey line for the NFL to play with. And I say, do what you can to get this guy some help. But please understand, for those sympathetic to his plight, that doesn't give him the right to still work in the NFL until these problems are solved. He's got to get them solved, Skip.
And that's my problem discussing this story. I don't know what his problem really is, Titus Young. Stephen A., I'm fascinated by the story. We all are. We rubbernecked this story because he got arrested, 3 times in 2 days? Or
5 days.
5 days.
3 times 5 days.
And every time you read another story, you say, what? Again? So, I've been doing this for a long time, Stephen A. Some people have disorder problems, diagnosable, treatable problems. Some people are just bad to the core. They're just born bad. I can't explain it. I don't know what to do about it. And I don't know where Titus Young falls. So I read the comments from his father, who says that his son suffers from a disorder caused by his brain being compressed in the front of his skull during his rookie year. Couldn't remember the name of the disorder, but said that after he suffered a concussion his rookie year, this disorder came to be. The Lions never listed him as having a concussion his rookie year. So I don't know what to believe here. The problem that he faces right now, Titus Young, is that nobody's going to sign him for next year because it's just too many incidents. Remember, he had a string of on and off field incidents that finally forced the Detroit Lions to cut him loose. Remember, he even sabotaged plays, he admitted last year. He's upset with the way he's being handled, lined up in the wrong formations on purpose. Was this because of his disorder from a concussion? I don't know. I don't know what to say. Nobody knows. I do know this, though. I believe in Brandon Marshall. I've told you this before. We've had him here on the show. I like him and I believe in him. And I believe in his conversion, both with his disorder and with his spirituality. And I like what he said about Titus Young. He seems to have had some interaction with Titus and has some real insight into Titus's potential disorder. So I would take that part to the bank. If Brandon's telling me this is treatable, that he does suffer from something that is actually diagnosable, okay, then God bless him. I hope he gets help. Dad says he needs a court order to make a judge is going to have to force him to take already prescribed medication. Okay, good. Be my guest. Clean yourself up. Show us that you can now cope again back in the real world, and then he does deserve a second shot in the NFL. Right now, for next year, I don't think that's going to be a possibility. I could be wrong about that. So I don't think the NFL is going to have to rule on it or suspend him. I just think nobody's going to give him a shot next year because it's just too many incidents in a row.
You know, and it's always a dicey subject to touch on this, but, you know, obviously we've got the format that allows for it. Skip, listen, you know, you don't want to come across as unsympathetic, and lacking empathy in any way. You want this guy to receive all the help that he needs. I hope that he receives the help that he needs, assuming he does need help, and that he ends up back in the NFL. But the reason I felt that it was important to touch on this subject, because on far too many occasions, we find ourselves talking about athletes who find themselves in trouble. But one of the deterrents to it is essentially outing them. Now, in this particular case, it may not apply, but it's incredibly important that we understand that the people who really deserve to be talked about, who really deserve to be praised, who really deserve some sympathy, are people far more often than not who are exposed to these circumstances, and they're not the ones with problems. The vast majority of NFL players go to work, do what they got to do. They got problems too. Now, it may not be the same as Titus Young, It may not be the same as what Brandon Marshall described himself going through, and I applaud him for doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of Brandon Marshall. I'm not knocking him in any way. I'm simply saying when you talk about empathy and sympathy, I'm talking about what about the people that are doing things right, but find themselves subjected to certain circumstances that ultimately provoke stiffer rules and regulations and stuff like that have nothing to do with them, their actions, their behavior, nothing. It gets to a point where that one bad apple ruining the whole tree comes into play. Well, there's nothing wrong with the other good apple saying, damn, how come we got to be exposed to this yet again? Those are the kind of things I think we need to develop a heightened level of sensitivity to, not just the victims, but those who have been victimized.
All right, let's leave it right there.
Not the villains, I'm sorry, but those who have been victimized.
The NFL has not issued any type of ruling on his off-the-field issues. Coming up next.